have been hearing about a song that y'all do about rattlesnakes.
No, it isn't.
It's not rattlesnakes, huh?
No,
it's not a song.
No, it's rattlesnakes, but it ain't a song.
Oh, well, now I've been hearing folks tell that everywhere you go, and you've never done it here in Atlanta, that everywhere you go, that people really do like that. Would y'all do that tonight for us?
Be glad.
What do you call it?
Well, we really don't call it anything, Warren. It's a story. Well, you know, we went up in Kentucky and sang at a church where they handle rattlesnakes. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Have you? How many of you ever heard of a church that handles snakes? Oh man, we got a mess of people familiar with it. All right, I'll do it. We, you know, we thought we had sung everywhere there is to sing. We had a chance one time to sing in Carnegie Hall. We sang in almost every country peaceful to our country around the world, and in almost every city, for instance, in Germany and Holland and Spain. We've sang at every kind of church you could imagine and every kind of auditorium, and I thought that if nothing else, we had seen about all the crowds. And here not too long ago, we sang in a church up above, well, I won't say up above where, because then I'm going to start pinpointing the church and might get myself in a little Dutch, but up in the mountains of Kentucky, we sang in a church unlike anything I've ever seen in my life. This church had been writing us to come there and sing, and our agents had told us, when you get in 100 miles of there, go and sing. And we did. We pulled up in front of this church, and it was an old church. It was over 100 years old. It had never even been painted. It had 3 drop lights inside. We had to run drop cords a half a mile to get to our amps to plug up. When we pulled up in the yard, I told the children here, I said, we're going to have ourselves a time tonight. I just knew that old church is going to be full of spirit, and it was, honey. It was. We went in there, after we sung about 3 songs, they were shouting all over that church. I've never seen so many people in one church shout. And in a little while, they shouted themselves right around in back of us. 3 ladies and 2 men. Well, now, when we were hooking up, we saw some curtains or something laying over some boxes back there. We didn't pay any attention to it, didn't know what was in there, and didn't care. But in a little while, they came out around us with 5 of the biggest rattlesnakes I have ever laid my eyes on. I like to die. When the service was over, they told us that the biggest rattlesnake they had in that service was 5 feet long. Honey, the one they brought by me was 27 feet long. Let me say this. I'm not knocking these people. I promise you I'm not knocking them. I don't know if they're right or wrong, you know. I'll tell you, they claim that they read in the Bible where Moses had enough faith to take up the serpent. And some members of their congregation claim to have that much faith. And I'll tell you one thing I found out before I left there. They had a whole lot more faith than what I had. Now, this one woman stopped about 2 feet from where I was trying to pick and sing. I didn't even know what key I was in. She took that rattlesnake with a head as big as your fist and held it up and stuck it right down in her face and shouted in its ear, if a rattlesnake's got an ear. She wrapped that thing around her neck. She threw it down on the floor, kicked off her shoe, and put her bare foot on top of its head. When she throwed that thing down on the floor, its tail missed my foot about that far. I done a little shouting myself. And she thought I was in the spirit. And brought me one up. But I saw right away that we had a house full of people and we didn't have but 5 rattlesnakes. And I want you folks to know one thing, there ain't a greedy bone in my body. told him to give mine to Geraldine. You know, now I'm scared of rattlesnakes. These girls are scared of potato bugs. It hadn't even dawned on me that they was in the world. And all at once, I remembered them, and we had already backed up as far as we could back. And I looked around at Jerry, and she was the color of cotton. And I knew she was about 17 seconds from hitting the floor. She looked over there at me and said, "What in the world are we going to do?" And I said, "Just take it easy. Don't panic." I said, "Just look around and find out where the back door is." She said, "I already looked and there ain't none." I said, "Reckon where do they want one?" As I went out the door, I told them where they could send my guitars and amps. Now, if you ever get a chance to go to church where they take up the serpent, I want you to go. Sit on the back row, but go. I stood around and I mixed and mingled with these people after service was over. I just couldn't leave. Man, I wanted to talk to these people. I wanted to hear more about it. I was interested in anybody got that kind of faith or whatever it is it takes to pick one of them up. I mean, a frog I can see. And I was talking to the preacher back in the back of the church, and I was telling him, I said, "Well, I ain't no way I can knock him." He said, I hope you don't disapprove. And I said, "Ain't no way I can knock him, man." I said, "Ain't no way I could pick that thing up. I've seen them now, and I couldn't touch one of them." And this lady walked up to me. She said, "Brother Wendy, you mean to tell me if the Lord commanded you to take up the serpent, you wouldn't take him up?" I said, "Yes, ma'am, I surely would. But he didn't, and I ain't."
Thank you very much. Thank you. That featured Jerry and Jan, and I love to hear them sing that old gospel song. You know, there's one thing about singing gospel music. I guess we're a little bit different from any other kind of music in the world. The people pretty much own you, and the people pretty much tell you how it is, you know. I had this one little old lady come up to me tonight while we were getting ready to come on out there, and she said she wanted to ask me a question, and said I didn't even have to answer if I didn't want to. And she kind of called me off to the side and asked me if Jerry had turned a little bit gray, or if she had put some of that stuff on her hair. She noticed them streaks in there, you know. Well, it really tickled me, 'cause actually, it ain't even her hair. Right? We ain't got no idea whose hair that is. But this is the day of the wig, you know, and you just pull up and sop on a new head and come on in. And this is one thing that irks me. You know, we come in here tonight. We'd been driving. It's a long ways from where we come from to Oklahoma, and we'd been driving. We was about wore out. I was so tired I couldn't even hardly see. Come in here all beat up looking and trying to shape up a little bit and try to get everything unloaded and the guitars set up. All them girls had to do was sop on a new head. Then we come on this stage and that MC had to say, "Two of the prettiest girls that's ever been on the stage," and then didn't even mention my name. But that's the way it is in the day of the week. Now, I'll tell you what, we used to, where I kept all my stuff in the bus, now we got these big old plastic bubbles. and we got them all full of wigs. They got a wig for any occasion, any time, anywhere we pull in. All they got to do is put on. Now, where I used to keep my clothes, we got these big old bubbles, and they're all full of wigs. And when they run out of any other place to put the wigs, you know, in the back of our bus, we got a Formica top dressing table. And I want to tell you how they do. They'll take a styrofoam head, and they'll sop one of them wigs down on top of that styrofoam head. And then they take that styrofoam head and they stick it down on a stick. That's right. I'm not going to tell you what kind of stick it is, but right down at the bottom of it, it has a plunger on it about that big around. Well, they'll wet that plunger, and then they'll sop it down on that styrofoam cabinet, and honey, you couldn't pull it off with a bulldozer. And them things are just lined up back there on that cabinet, shaking their head at me as I look through that rear view mirror. Not too long ago, we were singing up in Kentucky, and I don't know if you've ever been in those Kentucky mountains or not, but you can almost meet yourself coming down one of them. And we'd been driving for about 2 days and 2 nights on this tour, and boy, I was so sleepy, I didn't know what I was going to do. We had to pick up another tour in Tennessee, and there was no way I could make it. Man, I was just gone, that's all. I'd come to for a minute, and then I'd go right back crazy nearly again. I hung my head out the window, I propped my eyes open. I'd completely made up my mind. It's about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'd completely made up my mind that there's nothing I could do but pull over, that we wouldn't make the next date. Nothing could wake me up. And all at once, one of them gray streaked wigs got off of the stick back there, come tearing down that aisle, bounced off of that dash, hit me on the leg, and honey, I woke up. I'll tell you that. Well, I just thought you might want to know how come these girls look so good all the time. It's on account of they got everything artificial now to fix themselves up a little bit. And when you're looking at them on this stage and you're thinking about how pretty they are, I want you to remember one thing. I ain't got nothing but my natural beauty to see me through. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, we appreciate that. I'll tell you what. We just learned to love this place. You know, when the first time we ever had to come to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, we were awfully afraid, where you always are when you're a long ways from home, to a crowd that you never have picked for before. But I'll tell you what, this is the easiest place in the world to fall in love with people. Not only our crowd that comes here to hear us, but WB and all the folks involved just treat us so good. And I don't know, it just seemed like, although we're like about 850 miles from where we live, seems like when we come out here, we're home. People treat us that way. Folks meet us in the lobby, and we've just got more friends here than you could ever believe, and it about tickles us to death, I'll tell you that. And we've sold a lot of our history books here at our record booth, and we've been having so many people ask us about our trip to Europe. As you know, in that book, it shows us singing on stage in Spain and Germany and Holland, some of the places around the world that we sang at. And we've had so many people ask us about the hardships over there and what we went through. You know, we were there for 3 months. And I'll kind of answer a question or two here. Just one question, one hardship we had, and that was food. We made it real good as far as buying, you know. We done a lot of shopping while we were there. We had 3 months. We done 2 programs a day, 6 days a week. But we had the time off in between, and we always went shopping. We didn't have too much money trouble. We just held it out, and whatever we was buying, they took what they wanted.
We never could savvy the marks and all that kind of stuff, you know. But we had ourselves a mess of trouble eating. Now, the girls, I never heard them grumble or complain about anything, but we started out in Morocco. And boy, you can't believe they don't know what streak-lean thickening gravy is in Morocco, I'll tell you that much. We about starved to death. We was there for a week, and the only thing we could get to eat was a native dish called couscous. And couscous tastes exactly like it sounds. You ever eat it? It's made out of dried goat meat and desert vegetables, and if you think dried goat meat tastes bad, honey, you ought to eat some desert vegetables. We could get it down, keeping it was the problem, you know. Well, the girls, after we was there 3 or 4 days, they had lost 4 or 5 pounds and losing steady and grumbling, and they just kept on, you got to come up with something for us to eat. And I said, well, now look, man, these people, they don't even write right. How am I going to read what they say? So I told them if they'd hold on a few days, we'd be in Spain. And I felt like when we got to Spain, we'd be more our kind of people. And I felt like I could converse with the Spaniards better, you know. And we landed in Madrid, Spain. That's where our first program was. And we went in this beautiful restaurant and sat down, and the waiter came over. And oh, I mean, he is a sharp fella, and he bowed at the waist. He done all the things they do in Spain, and he handed us a menu. And the girl said, see, you can't read this either. And I said, you just hold on. I wasn't born yesterday. So I looked up at this fella, and everybody agreed they could eat a fried chicken easy. So I looked up at this old boy, and first I just said, look, we want to order 3 fried chickens. And he just shook his head and said something like no comprehendo or something. And he said that everywhere we went. And so the girl said, see, he can't understand you either. And I said, you just wait a minute. So I clucked a little bit for him. I figured a chicken clucks the same way all over the world. But evidently it don't. He just grinned a little bit and shook his head at me again, you know. So I even a time or two. He enjoyed it, but he didn't know what it meant. By then, everybody in that restaurant was laughing at us. And listen, I'd have laid him an egg if I could have. Just to show him that all we wanted was 3 fried chickens. He never did get it, and I got tired of it, and I just told the girls, I said, we're going to take this menu. I said, little Jan, you order number 1, I'll order number 2, Jerry order number 3, and whatever they bring, that's what we'll eat. In a little while, our food come back, and little Jan had what looked like a piece of white pork with some kind of gravy on it. It was real good. And I had what I believe was a veal cutlet, had hot sauce on it, out of this world. But Jerry, who has the weakest stomach in our group, I mean, buddy, she don't eat nothing she don't recognize. And then she hunts a hare in it. She wound up with 12 little hickeys, just about that long and right curly looking. And I looked over there at her, and she was fingering around through that plate, you know. She looked to me like she didn't know where to eat them or attack them. And I told her, I said, now, I don't know what that is in your plate, but if I was you, I'd start eating them, because it's going to be a long time before morning. And in a little while, she poor girl is starved to death. I noticed her tasting one of them. And in just a few minutes, I looked back, and honey, they was all gone.
As a matter of fact, she said it was some of the finest food she ever put in her mouth. Said if she could find out what they were, she'd order them again. And in a little while, our waiter came back, and he brought with him a man that we found out was called Senor Hernandez. We found out he owned the restaurant. We found out that he spoke 7 different languages. I mean, this boy wasn't nothing but educated. And I like educated people. I mean, I'm educated myself. A lot of people wonder why I don't let these girls talk. It's 'cause they ain't got no education. Ain't nobody gonna talk on no program I'm on. They ain't got no education, I'll tell you that. This boy was educated. He came over, listen, he had the blackest, curliest hair I've ever laid my eyes on. He had a little pinstripe mustache. Is absolutely pretty. He had on a tuxedo with silk lapels. He had a little silk hanky in his pocket, patent leather shoes on his feet, and as the prettiest man I've ever looked at. I promise you, he'd make Hovey Lister look like he had been dead 6 months. How come y'all didn't tell me Hovey is here? Well, anyway, he clicked his heels together, he bowed at the waist, and he looked down at me and said, "Senor," just like that. And boy, I looked right back up at him and I said, "Hey, how y'all?" He said, "My waiter tells me that he couldn't converse with you, and I think I can talk to you." He said, "Is there something I can help you with?" And I said, "As a matter of fact, there is." I said, "We'd like to know what number 3 is on this menu." I said, "She just eat 12 of them, and we're curious to know what they are." But before I tell you what it was, let me just say this. A lot of people greet a shock in different ways. Now, my wife at home claims if she has a real bad shock, all the blood runs out of her legs. She has to go sit down. If I get a real bad shock, I get butterflies in my stomach, and I can't get my breath real good. But when old Leather Lungs gets a bad shock, she vomits. It don't matter where she's at, she vomits. Senor Hernandez looked down at that menu, and he said, "The madame had snails for dinner." Honey, when he said snails, she just let it all go. All over the table, all over the floor, and all over Senor Hernandez and his patent leather shoes. Listen, this highly educated man from Spain didn't even look excited. He jerked that little lace hanky out of his pocket. He jumped back 1 pace and said, my, she regurgitated." Regurgitated. You ever heard anything like that in your life? I said, "Buddy, when you start sopping that up, you gonna find out that old girl done in your shoes." Well, I just thought you'd like to know how it is when 3 Georgia clodhoppers go to Europe.
Wendy Bagwell and the Sunliters from Atlanta, Georgia. How about it?
us to death, we'll never die. We appreciate that. You know, I can't think of anywhere in the world I'd rather be right now than Nashville, Tennessee. The new year didn't start off right for me. You just can't believe. We drove 850 miles from Atlanta to Nashville. This is a fact with my hand up. We went to Jackson, Mississippi. We unloaded our records. We unloaded our guitars. We tuned up. We put on the best clothes we had and found out we was in the wrong town. I thought I'd die, honestly. And it ain't just the money, it's the humility. I had to go out and pack up my records after everybody got in the lobby. And they're saying, wonder why they're leaving. You know, who fired them? Then tonight, I put on my suit. My suit's new. I put on my suit, and as soon as I got out of the bus and come in the auditorium, the girls started fussing at me. And they have fussed at me until the minute before we come on this stage. I can't believe you wore that sweater with it. I can't believe you didn't put on a tie and a shirt. Well, I wanted to, but I couldn't get it over my hair. By the way, before we get into this taping too much, if I seem a little nervous, I'm a little nervous. I'll tell you, anything like this scares me. If they was doing everybody, I might be all right. But it scares me when they start putting up extra stuff, and I'm a little bit nervous. Matter of fact, folks, I'm scared nearly to death. The record company's spending a lot of money, and I just know we'll blow it. So in a little while, I'm going to tell you about the first play I was ever in. And Lord, I hope it's funny. We got a little story we want to tell you. You know, it always kind of thrills me to get to pick on a stage. I never expected to, you know, and I never did have much talent and never did pick up none on the way. I got a couple of girls here and kind of cover up for me a little bit. I know 3 or 4 chords on this guitar, and really, if the truth is known, I ain't got no business standing on this stage in Nashville, Tennessee tonight, and I know it, honey. But it's a thrill to me, and I honestly believe that the Lord done it for me. Now, I really do, because I was in the 5th grade before I was ever even in a school play. Now, that's a fact. You know, a lot of people say, nah, ain't none of them teachers look on you different, but they do. Now, I was poor. Now, a lot of you might have been poor. Honey, I was poor when I was a kid. I mean, like I had them stick-on soles on my shoes long as I can remember. And they used to always come off about 12 noon, you know. And the teacher would say, if you either stick them things on or take them off. And I was a little bit shaggy. I had long hair. I mean, it's down to my shoulders, and I wasn't no hippie. I didn't have no dime to get it cut off. And when it was time every year for our school play, if there's 48 kids in that class, I knew who wasn't going to be in that school play, even if they needed 46 kids in the play. Me and Corinne Cunningham. Now, Corinne Cunningham was the only person I ever knew in my life I could look down on. She was poorer than we were. I mean, that poor girl, I don't know how she got so big. Now, when I was in the 5th grade, I was the smallest kid in the class. I was smaller than the smallest girl because I was raised on grits and grease. Did you ever take a bowl of grits and take yesterday's streak-o-lean grease and mix in there with it? So, honey, it's as good as butter if you ain't had butter. But you don't get too big on it. Somehow or other, Corinne Cunningham got a head and a half taller than I was, and that girl invented ugly. She had enough oil in her hair to crank my bus out there. It beat all you've ever seen. Well, when we got in the 5th grade, it was time for the school play. And I was one of the first kids that Ms. Dobbs, who was our teacher at that time, called out to be in that play. And I almost cried. It about tickled me to death. And she told us that we was going to be in a play called Pickin Up Paw Paws and Putting Them in Your Pocket. Now, I don't know how many of you is in that play, but it's one more good play, I'll tell you that. And each one of us would have a partner. We had a girl in our class named Betty Ann Moore. That's the prettiest thing I ever laid my eyes on. She had long curls. She could tap dance. She could sing. She could play a piano. She wore a different dress to school every day. She ate in the cafeteria. And you can't get much richer than that, buddy. And when Miss Dobbs called out my partner, it was Betty Ann Moore. Buddy, I ran every inch of the way home, and I went tearing in my house, and I said, Daddy, I'm in the school play. It's called Pickin Up Paw Paws, Putting Them in Your Pocket, and Betty Ann Moore is my partner. And my dad was beside himself. One of his kids had finally made it, you know. He was proud, I'll tell you that much. Miss Dobbs sat down and she played that song on the piano, and she gave us our little note that showed us how to sing the song, and she started going through it. First we was to learn the singing, then we was to learn the dancing, and there was me and Betty Moore. We'd have to hold hands, you know, and we'd do it out almost. Oh, I just thought I'd go crazy. So, ooh, I can still remember. Well, Anyway, Ms. Dobbs sat down at that piano. She went over it with us, you know, and then we went into it. It's a lot of you was, I'm sure, in the same play. It's a very simple little play called Pickin Up Paw Paws, Putting Them in Your Pocket. Pickin Up Paw Paws, Putting Them in Your Pocket. Pickin Up Paw. You've been through that one, I'm sure. I know you have, the way you like. Your name ain't Corinne Cunningham. Anyway, there we was. Now, most of the kids, the only time they practiced was when they was at school. Honey, I went home, I locked myself in that back room, I got in front of that mirror, and all night long, night after night, picking up paw paws, putting them in your pocket. I learned it so good, and Miss Dobbs herself said that in 25 years of picking up paw paws, I picked them up better than anybody she'd ever seen. She even said I'd done it better than the girls, buddy, and that's something. Well, anyway, it was about 3 days before time for that play to start, and I was rehearsed up to Fare You Well, and Miss Dobbs made the announcement. She said, now all the boys will wear white shoes, navy blue pants, a white shirt, and a navy blue tie. And I knew I was in trouble. But I ran every inch of the way home, and that's a long run considering we live 10 miles from that school. I ran in and I told my daddy, my mother died when I was a baby, so my dad was my mother-in-law. So I ran in and I told my dad, I said, Daddy, I always called him that all my life. Still till this day. I said, I've got to have a pair of white shoes, navy blue pants, a white shirt, and a navy blue tie, and my daddy went into hysterics. He said, boy, the closest we can come to that is to whitewash your feet. When my sister come home from work, I was squalling in the bedroom, you know. The whole world had crashed in around me. I was just a tender kid of 15 years old in the 5th grade, so. You can imagine what it done to me. Well, anyway, my sister said, now just take it easy. She said, we'll work something out. And she always came to my rescue that way. So she went and bought some red, blue red. And she took an old pair of pants I had as slick with wire. I know you've had them, some of you as poor when you was a kid. And she dyed them with that new blue red. The only thing was they come out a pukey purple, you know. And they dyed them old black cardboard sole shoes white, and they speckled. I'll never forget, my daddy said, boy, from a distance, they ain't gonna know but what that shirt's white. That shirt was one of them old blue denims that just faded. But all at once, my dad remembered something that thrilled me out of my mind. He said, boy, I've got a brand new tie in there in the chest of drawers that was given to me for a Christmas present I've never even had on. And I thought, well, now if I got a new tie, they may not notice anything else. He brought that thing out in the first place. It wasn't navy blue. It was kind of a powder puff blue. It was about this wide and about that long, and had a hand-painted pink hula girl on the front of it. And I knew Miss Dobbs wouldn't put up with that, and I told him so. He said, boy, it ain't no problem, we'll scrape it off. So he got a razor blade and he scraped. Then I wound up with a powder puff blue tie that wide and that long, with a hand-painted pink hula girl that looked like she had leprosy or something. He tied that thing around my neck, and the knot was the same size as my head. And I took off to school with that necktie dragging the ground. Every third step, I'd nearly strangle myself with it. I went busting in the room, and Miss Dobbs looked at me and said, there ain't no way. And I started squalling again. She said, just take it easy, you'll still be in the play. Just don't start that. She hated to see anybody panic. So we went into the auditorium. The play is supposed to be at 3 o'clock. All the parents that could come was there, you know. It was a big day. And I was happy because I was going to get to be in it anyway. We went strolling in that auditorium. She said, now, I'm changing your position. You know where I wound up? On the back row with Corrine Cunningham.
I'll tell you what, if you keep that up, we're about to sing ourselves to death in here tonight. Boy, this is a good audience. You know, it seems like every time we come up this way, people always treat us this way, and it just about tickles us to death, I'll tell you that much. We really appreciate it. We like to sing up here in Yankee Land. Everybody's so good to us. And we have a lot of people up here, you know, we talk a little bit different from what folks do up here. And we have an awfully lot of people up here always asking us where we're from. And of course, I know when you talk different and you're in a different part of the country from where you come, people's always a little curious. Actually, we come from Boston, you know. No. No, actually, we don't come from Boston either. We're from Smyrna, Georgia. Now, I know that there's a lot of people out there in this audience that don't know where Smyrna, Georgia is. So just to kind of clarify where Smyrna is, it's between Austell and Mableton, Georgia, about 50 miles from Cumming. Now you know where it is, don't you? Well, we're always thrilled to be here. You know, the first time we ever played anywhere in the North was a mighty big jump from Smyrna, Georgia. Gene Preston called us from up in Nashville, Tennessee, and he told us that there's some folks up in New York wanting us to play in Carnegie Hall. Well, I'd heard about Carnegie Hall all my life, and I thought the man was kidding for a while, but sure as you're living, we went up and played in a New York program all about music in Carnegie Hall. And I guess that's the scaredest we've ever been since we've been into picking and singing business. But we represented gospel music up there, and we had ourselves a time, although we're scared. I never will forget walking in that place. You know, there's so much tradition behind it, and we really had the shivers. And we were pretty late on the program, And Joe Bostic, a mighty good friend of mine from up there that hired us for Carnegie Hall, he told us, he said, now your pearl buttons is doing real good up here. The folks like you. Don't you worry about a thing. But it didn't help us a bit. We were scared to death. We went in there, and you know, in this program, they had all kind of different music in it. They even had opera in it. And honey, the only opera I knew anything about was the Grand Ole. And I'll guarantee you this is a different bunch altogether. They're just something fascinating to me. We were pretty late on that program, and they had us a little box seat up on the right up there over the stage where we could kind of watch up until time for us to go, you know. And after a while, we watched through that thing, and as it went on, we got scareder and scareder because these people was really living it up for all this talent they was real familiar with. And after a while, the program director there, he saw how scared we was, and he offered us some buffering, you know. Oh, I'm telling you, we had about 8 boxes and 14 Coca-Colas, and still didn't help us a bit. About 10 or 15 minutes before time for us to go on, there's a little fella come up there, and he said, curtain call. I looked at him, I said, what does that mean, man? Where I come from, there ain't no such thing as that. He said, you just come on down. Said, it's about time for you to go on. Well, we got down there, you know, and we're standing there at that curtain, and it had all kind of different stuff on. And after a while, this fella walked up to the microphone. Did you have to drop that thing right while I'm trying to talk? I'm telling you what's the truth. You don't know how it is to have to work with a bunch of idiots. She only learned a couple of months ago that buffering works twice as fast as aspirin. Well, anyway, we stood there at that curtain and waiting to go on, and the act just before us was an opera singer. And boy, he walked out there to that microphone, and I'm here to tell you that boy wasn't afraid of Carnegie Hall. He walked out there to that microphone, that big 40-piece orchestra behind him. He raised up one hand, and he set into singing, and that crowd went out of their minds. And I just thought, man, how come they got to put us right behind a big opera singer like that? It just about scared me to death. And all at once, I just calmed right down. And I turned around to the girls, and I said, I want you to listen to that man. Why he's singing about the farm. I said, here he is so high class, and we're so scared, and he's singing about the farm. Now, he was singing in Italian, and I don't understand Italian. But I know he is singing about the farm, because every now and then, while he is singing that song, he'd come out with it. Vigoro, Vigoro, Vigoro. Everybody knows that's fertilizer. Well, we went out on that stage. Honey, we shivered and shook and prayed every inch to that microphone. We sit down on our first song. There he was out there singing them big fine opera songs, and there we were waiting to go on 3 Georgia clodhoppers with a sick guitar. You can imagine how we felt. But we got up to that microphone. I was out of breath. I couldn't even hardly breathe. And we sat down on it. We done our first song, and that crowd turned on. Man, I don't know if they're sorry for us. I don't know what it was, and I didn't care. After we got through with that one, we done our pearl buttons. That's what we was hired to do. And after we got through with pearl buttons, we got the thrill of our life. Man, all at once, some of them started getting up. Some more started getting up. At first, I thought they was getting up to leave, you know. I got all scared again. But then I found out that they was just getting up to clap for us little old Georgia folks that didn't have no business up there in the first place. And that kind of made us fall in love, excuse me. Had my nose fixed, now my mouth won't work. Made us made us fall in love with you Yankees, and you've been treating us good ever since. And I think with the help of the Lord like we had there in Carnegie Hall that day, and with nice folks like you, we ain't never been scared to come north again.